Hi, this is Nathaniel, and this is my final presentation on tornadoes. So, first off, why care about tornadoes? So, first off, tornadoes are destructive forces of nature, especially the most powerful ones. And a personal aspect for me is that my dad grew up in Northern Virginia, and a nearby high school, Woodson High School in Fairfax, was hit by an EF3 in 1973 and by another EF3 just a few layers in 1979. And my dad ended up having to share his school with those students as a result. And the picture you see in the background is actually from Woodson High Schools from, I believe, the first tornado that hit the school. And tornadoes are frequently mentioned in pop culture in various ways, as we'll get to later. And tornadoes are very common in America. Most of them form in America with over 1,000 per year. So, first off, what is a tornado? It is a vertical spinning column of air. Their width and speed vary, and the usual maximum width is a mile wide, but I say usual because we'll get to a special case later. And their wind speeds vary, though the maximum is 300. Those are not very common. Usually they're more in the range of, say, 80 or so. And tornadoes are typically formed in supercell thunderstorms and are often accompanied by a green tinted sky and hail. Tornadoes form when cold, dry air collides with warm, moist air, which creates a mesocycle, which is effectively updraft that creates the rotation that ultimately will form a tornado. So, some important caveats. Tornadoes don't just form in supercell thunderstorms, they are known to form in hurricanes and tropical storms. The second tornado that hit Woodson High was a result of a hurricane, just to give an example. And a greenish sky or a supercell thunderstorm does not mean a tornado is guaranteed to show up. They are warning signs that could, but it is no means exclusive. And the same thing goes for hail. Hail can accompany tornadoes, but it's not exclusive. So, where do tornadoes form? They do form worldwide, but the US is a hotspot, especially the middle of the country, which has been given the nickname Tornado Alley, which stretches from northern Texas all the way up to the southern Dakotas. And it's such a prone spot because the colder, drier air from Canada comes down and the moist, warmer air from the Gulf of Mexico rises up, and it serves as a good point where tornadoes can form. Though there's also Dixie Alley, which is southern states like Mississippi, Alabama, where a lot of tornadoes also do form. And the number of twisters forming there are increasing, though the cause is unclear whether it is a natural cause or if it somehow has to do with human caused climate change. And this is just a map showing Tornado Alley, just to show that it does indeed stretch from northern Texas into the Dakotas, eastern Colorado, and again, it's by no means exclusive that this is where tornadoes only form. They can form in all 50 states. It's just that the middle of the country, places like Kansas, Mississippi, Missouri, are where they most frequently form. So, tornadoes are classified based on something called the Fujita scale, and these classifications are based on wind speed and damage, and they were made by a man named Ted Fujita, associated with the University of Chicago in the early 1970s. And it's on a 0 to 5 basis, with 0 being the weakest and 5 being the strongest, 0 being the most common, with fives being very rare. And despite these classifications on wind speed and damage, there is some gray area, and we're going to get to an example of that later on. So, as for aspects of cultural references to tornadoes, we have to talk about Sharknado because it's a recent example of tornadoes showing up in pop culture. So, it is a movie series about a whole bunch of tornadoes forming that contain bloodthirsty sharks that are intent on eating people. And despite the fact that they have cheesy writing and a ridiculous premise, 6 of these things were made, and they were so bad that they were, in a way, almost good and had many celebrity cameos. Now, on a more traditional aspect of cultural references to tornadoes, we got The Wizard of Oz. It's a classic from the late 30s, and the tornado played a crucial role, sending Dorothy and her little dog Toto from Kansas all the way to the land of Oz, and that's where the story starts. Now, in terms of specific tornadoes, we're going to talk about the Tri-State Tornado of 1925. And this thing, as far as I'm concerned, had absolutely no right to exist. And these statistics on it looked completely fake just because it was just absolutely insane what this tornado did. And this one singular tornado broke records in 1925, and many of them still stand even today. So, the Tri-State Tornado, it traveled for over 200 miles, 219 miles to be exact. As you can see, if we go back to this slide, and you see in the bottom right hand corner how it stretches from southeastern Missouri through southern Illinois into southern Indiana. So it was an EF5 with wind speeds estimated to be over 300 miles per hour, and it was about a mile wide, and it was a straight path from Missouri through Illinois into Indiana. Almost 700 people died, which is a record for the most killed in a single tornado in U.S. history, and 2,000 were hurt as a result. And over 200 of those deaths came from one lone community in Illinois, and that was a record for most killed in one community in a single tornado. And this tornado traveled for about 3 hours, 3.5 hours, at an average speed of 60 miles per hour, and a record of over 70 miles per hour. So it was effectively going highway speed for 3 hours through 3 states. Pretty crazy stuff. So we're going to talk about the El Reno tornado now, which hit El Reno, Oklahoma, due west of Oklahoma City. And we're going to be talking about this particular tornado for a few reasons. First off, it was a little bit more recent. It happened in 2013. Second off, it has a record that even the Tri-State Tornado can't match. It was the widest recorded tornado ever. It was 2.6 miles wide, which is about the length of Manhattan, which is just crazy. And it could have been a lot worse than it was, because it happened during rush hour, and thousands in the Oklahoma City area tried to outrun the tornado, which is the opposite of what you should do, because when a tornado is coming, you should hunker down in the basement or closet or something like that instead of trying to outrun it, because just because you're heading away from where the tornado is heading now doesn't mean you're going to stay ahead of the tornado, because it can change direction. So trying to outrun it is a very bad idea. And if the tornado had not dissipated when it did, and it had reached the fleeing residents, hundreds could have potentially died. So it was heading a little bit west of Oklahoma City, and it was heading towards the metropolitan area, but it fizzled out before then. And this tornado is also controversial because it was categorized as an EF3, and the Fujita scale classifications are largely based on damage caused. And the thing is that there wasn't much damage because this El Reno tornado mostly passed through fields, so it was mostly just impacting just some crops instead of a downtown. And it was measured wind speeds that were consistent with an EF5, about 300 miles per hour, but the EF3 classification has stuck, and that's remained a sore point. So it just goes to show about how, as much as we may know about tornadoes, there's still a lot we don't know. For example, how exactly still to classify them. And so these are just some of the sources I used, along with a picture of a water spout. And then finally, here are some of my other sources that were not scholarly. All right, so thank you for listening to my presentation.